Chapter 11, Many Are Called. Jack, I want you to know how much I appreciate you letting us barge in on you like this so late in the afternoon. I hope we aren't interrupting anything? Rodney asked as Jack Valerie was letting them into his workshop. Rodney, Alex, Grandpa JJ, Seth, and Jimmy found themselves standing inside the workshop of Jack Valerie, who was one of the associate professors of geology at New Mexico Tech. Not a bit, come on in you guys. My wife and I just finished dinner a little bit ago. My daughter and her husband came by to spend Sunday afternoon with us and just left a little while ago. Valerie explained, kicking a few boxes that had been lying around in the middle of the room, back to the wall. You came at good time. I was just going down to my shop here to get some materials ready for my summer school classes this week. You said you had a rock you wanted me to look at for you? Valerie asked. Sure do, Jack. Oh, by the way, this is Alex, my brother, my grandfather JJ, my son Seth, and my nephew Jimmy. Valerie shook hands with everyone, pausing at JJ's. So you're the famous Jim Thompson that Rodney's been telling me all about. Nice to finally meet you. I've heard a lot about you from Rodney since we moved here over a year ago. It's good to meet all of you. Sorry my shop here is kind of a mess right now, but squeeze in where you can, offered Valerie. He motioned for them to move in all the way inside. There were several boxes stacked up in various places along the interior wall of the workshop marked samples, along with several microscopes and other assorted equipment arranged neatly on tables in the middle of the room. I've been helping some of our undergraduates with their projects over the summer, so that's why you see all the extra boxes around in here. Valerie reached for some switches on the wall, and several lights came on, along with the machines that Valerie had on the tables. There were also several posters and collections of rocks neatly lined up on shelves that immediately caught Seth and Jimmy's attention. You two boys go ahead and help yourself with those. Believe it or not, all those rocks you see came from right here in New Mexico. Valerie exclaimed. Alex glanced over at Rodney. Hey Jack, speaking of rocks, my son Jimmy has a rock that he has brought with him. It was originally found by our grandfather years ago. Alex explained, motioning to Jimmy to take the rock out of his backpack. We were hoping that you could look at it and tell us what you think it is. Sure, let me take a look at it. Valerie motioned for the rock, going over to his equipment, and turning his computer on. Valerie glanced at Alex as if slightly puzzled. Alex, we've met before, haven't we? I think it was last summer when you brought your kids out for vacation. Alex nodded. Yeah, now that you mention it, we did meet then. Alex thought for a moment. It was when we went fishing down at Elephant Butte Lake. That's it. Valerie exclaimed, snapping his fingers. I couldn't remember there for a minute. That was fun, Valerie added. You work over at the college in Prescott, and you're a history teacher too, right? He asked. That's right, said Alex. Good. Well, let's look at that rock you got there, son. Valerie reached for the rock that Jimmy had been carefully holding on to. At first Jimmy was reluctant to relinquish the sphere. It's okay, Jimmy, I won't hurt it, he joked. That's not what he's worried about, Jack. You see, this sphere has some, well, rather unusual properties. Grandpa JJ explained. I see. Jimmy handed Valerie the sphere. He took the sphere and walked over to some of the equipment and began examining it closely. Where did you find this? He asked. Rodney, Seth, and Alex each turned and stared at their grandfather and Jimmy. JJ spoke first. Well, Jack, why don't you take a look at the rock first, then I will tell you the story of how I came across this sphere. JJ explained. It's a deal. Valerie nodded, grinned a bit, and then continued looking over the rock. A few moments passed quietly as Valerie looked at the stone. He almost seemed mesmerized by it as he looked at it closer and closer, probing it with different instruments. He paused and looked slowly up at the men. Have you shown this rock to anyone else before today? He asked. The men turned to Jimmy. I showed it to the old man downtown this morning, old Sam in the mineral shop. Jimmy explained. You went to see old Sam Stevenson, huh? Valerie said, as he was putting on his magnifying glasses. So, what did he tell you about this sphere of yours? He asked. He said he thought it was a diamond, Jimmy quietly explained as he watched Valerie examining the sphere. Valerie chuckled. Well, I don't know about that, Jimmy. Spherical diamonds don't exist naturally. If it were a diamond, it would have to be man-made. A few years ago, some gentleman in Japan made one, but it wasn't this big, and not this perfect. Valerie continued with his discourse while continuing to examine the sphere, switching back and forth between different tables and instruments within his workshop. Valerie's expression changed suddenly. I'll be damned. Valerie mumbled as he got a closer look at it with one of his larger microscopes. There was silence for several minutes as Valerie continued his examination. No one could quite make out what he was rattling on about. Then finally Valerie spoke up. I'm seeing something inside your sphere, like, if I didn't know better, I would say it had. Valerie paused and looked up at JJ and Jimmy with a strange expression on his face, that could only be described and one mixed with both excitement and fear. Well? What do you see, Jack? JJ asked. It looks like it's made of some kind of translucent microcircuitry, billions of them. More than I can ever see with my microscope. Valerie took off his glasses, turned off the light and slowly sat down in the stool behind him. Valerie turned around to face the others with the same amazed expression on his face. Jack, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Rodney asked. Valerie gave Rodney a momentary look of agreement as he turned on his stool and looked directly at JJ. Mr. Thompson, you told me a few minutes ago that if I took a look at this sphere of yours, you'd tell me where you got it. So, where did you find this? Valerie held up the sphere in his hand. JJ and Jimmy stared quietly at each other for a second or two as JJ began to tell Valerie the whole story of how he acquired the sphere. At first, Valerie was obviously skeptical about the story, but he listened nonetheless. Now Jack, what can you tell us about the sphere? Alex insisted. Valerie thought for a moment, holding the sphere in one hand, and scratching his head with the other. Well, here's what I can tell you. It's an absolutely flawless crystallized carbon sphere, and it contains some sort of microcircuitry that is barely noticeable under my microscope, with what looks like billions of circuits as far as I can tell, and that is under full power. Valerie took a deep breath, and breathed out slowly, and it's a one-of-a-kind. It was about that very same moment that Jimmy began to notice a strange high-pitched sound, like the squeal of fingernails on a dry dusty chalkboard. It started off soft, and then began to grow in intensity. At first only Jimmy and Seth could hear it, then finally the others. Soon all of them had their hands over their ears. What is that noise? Alex yelled. Jimmy, can you make it stop? Seth screamed, holding his hands over his ears. It's making me sick. Jimmy looked at Grandpa JJ, who was shaking his head. Okay, I'll try. Reevan, Jimmy yelled. Reevan, what is going on? The noise is too loud, it's hurting our ears. Jimmy yelled. Suddenly, everything went dark within Valerie's workshop. The only light was a soft blue glow emanating from within the sphere. It was quiet for a moment as everyone was looking around at each other for some sort of explanation. Jimmy? What just happened? Alex asked quietly. Jimmy and Grandpa JJ knew. They knew the moment it started, as if the sphere were speaking to them. Tell them, Reevan, said Grandpa JJ. The sphere began to slowly rise off the table and float in the air. An image materialized in the center of the 6 men and began to speak to all of them, but this was a different image and voice than either Jimmy or JJ had ever seen before. Hello. This is Chairman Marisus. It is good to finally hear from you, Reevan. How long we have awaited news of your mission and progress. We have received your latest transmission and are sending you the Earth coordinates for pickup. The coordinates are 33.6773 north, 106.4754 west. We will arrive in approximately 1.5 Earth hours. Best wishes and good luck. The message began repeating itself as the others watched in silence. Reevan? Asked Jimmy and JJ simultaneously. Reevan, can you hear us? The message ended. Yes, I can. Came the reply. As the image of Marisus faded, it was quickly replaced with the image of Reevan. Reevan, can you explain the message we've just seen? JJ asked. Yes, of course. Marisus is the chairman for the consortium I spoke of earlier this afternoon. This was his response to the message I sent out yesterday while you were visiting the array. Reevan explained. It seems they have sent coordinates for your pickup. What pickup? Alex asked. We didn't ask for a pickup. It's not you they want, Alex, it's the sphere, answered Reevan. They are returning for the sphere and all the data it contains, as well as the collected memories of Reevan, JJ, and Jimmy. Reevan? JJ asked. Yes, Jim. How are they going to arrange this pickup? He asked. They will send out a ship. Reevan explained. To Earth? Yes. Where? To the coordinates 33.6773 north, 106.4754 west, to be precise. Reevan added. Do you know where that is, Dad? Jimmy asked. I don't know, Jimmy, said Alex, as he turned to face Reevan. Reevan, could you tell us where those coordinates are? Before Reevan could answer, Valerie spoke up. It's the old World War II Trinity site, Valerie exclaimed. I've some small rock samples that were taken from there many years ago in my collection, Valerie explained. You can't get them anymore. Yes, of course, I was there too, whispered JJ. You are both correct. Trinity site is the pickup location, said Reevan. But why Trinity? Asked Alex. Because it was at that exact moment in your history, where the human race crossed over the line from obscurity to distinction, answered Reevan. Humans first demonstrated that you had learned to harness the power of the atom, for either your own advancement, or your own annihilation. As Reevan continued, images collected by the sphere were projected around the room. There were images of all the nuclear tests at Trinity, followed by several other nuclear tests conducted around the world throughout the years, each growing in strength and power. There were images of President John F. Kennedy speaking to the American people on television about the Russian missiles in Cuba, images of Nikita Khrushchev conferring with staff members in the Kremlin, as well as several other images throughout the years. The images suddenly stopped. All these years, I have been storing images like these in my memory and collecting information on the human race. Reevan continued. This information is vital for Chairman Marisus to present his case to the consortium. Present his case for what? Asked JJ. Marisus' case against the isolation and sterilization of Earth, Reevan explained. There was a stunned silence in the room for several moments as they all contemplated in their own way, the last words spoken by Reevan. Well, I guess that makes it important then, mumbled JJ. What, Pop? Asked Alex. It's important for Jimmy and I to take the sphere and return it to them, JJ answered, with a nod from Jimmy. Alex and Rodney suddenly turned towards their grandfather to protest as Reevan spoke again. That is correct, JJ, and you and Jimmy now have 87 minutes and 35 seconds to be at Point Trinity for the pickup, reminded Reevan. Before there could be any more protests by either Alex or Rodney, there came a loud knock on the door to Valerie's workshop as the sounds and images projected from the sphere immediately ceased. I'll get that, said Valerie as he went over to the door to open it. Alex and JJ nervously motioned for Jimmy to return the sphere to his backpack before the door opened. There were 4 men standing outside the door to Valerie's workshop. Alex immediately recognized the voices of at least 2 of them. Good evening, Mr. Valerie. I am Agent Carl Williams from the Department of Homeland Security. We are looking for a Mr. Alex Thompson along with Rodney and Jim Thompson, we have reason to believe, Williams continued for a moment as the door suddenly opened. Alex and Rodney were pulling the door open farther. I believe you're looking for us.
You've been listening to The Thompson Sphere by David E. Farmer, also now available on Amazon's Kindle. Hope you enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more chapters coming soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.